When we were trying to acquire this new facility, God didn't deliver us from the storm. It was one battle after another. God could have given us the victory the first day we prayed, just as easily as He did 3 years later. He's God. But no, His ways are not always our ways. During those 3 years, I learned to trust God like I had never trusted Him before. Some things you can only learn in the storm, when the battle's raging, when you don't know how you're going to make it. That's when you'll experience the faithfulness of God like you've never experienced it before. Now I can tell people with confidence when it looks impossible, when the odds are against you, when the medical report says no way, when the financial situation looks bleak, when your own thoughts are saying you're not going to make it. No, let me tell you firsthand, the God we serve can make a way. He is a faithful God. You see this building, this beautiful facility? This is the goodness of God. If He did it for us, He can do it for you. One of the tests you have to pass is being good to somebody else in the midst of your storm. That's what a friend of mine did. He's one of our staff members. Craig and his wife Samantha have a little boy that has autism.
When we brought him home, he was just like any of our other kids, you know, always sleeping, always wanting to eat, right?
Now the family's complete. We thought it was, but now, now we know it really is.
You giving it to Shelby?
As he began to develop, he really developed like the other kids. You know, they all have their own personalities. And Connor definitely had his. And Connor was actually very expressive, you know, in the things that he would do. I remember us talking to him and him repeating words, and we'd say, "Hi, Connor, Day loves you," and he'd say, "Love you." He was kind of your all-American boy.
About a year and a half, we kind of just started noticing, kind of playing by himself. And at first we just thought, wow, he's just a great, easy baby, plays by himself, doesn't cause, any problems. But it was, just the language and talking. He wasn't, talking a whole lot. He'd kind of point at things or, make motions to stuff.
Well, for a male, that's the hardest thing, A mom, they attach themselves to the child where whatever's wrong with them, that becomes their mission. A dad attaches himself emotionally with their child. So when at one time you were saying, "I love you," and they said, "I love you back," or you were giving them a hug and they gave you a hug back, or you'd say, "Come over and play," and we'd play together. When that shifts, it's like somebody puts a wall in between you and your son. It's like a dividing emotionally, because I couldn't. I would say stuff to him and he would turn away and he wouldn't look at me, or he stopped talking altogether. I'd want to play with him, and he would walk away and go sit in a corner.
Of course, that's not what they had planned in life. They could have gotten bitter, angry. God, why did we end up here? We're good people. How come we're facing this storm? No, their attitude was, God, we know you're in control of this storm. We believe your winds will blow us to where you want us to go.
So once we finally got the diagnosis, there was a part of me that was relieved that we're like, okay, we know what it is. And then it's like, okay, now what do we do about it? But then it was like, once you got into the what do we do about it, and it was so, doctors didn't really know what to tell you. It's just kind of, then you were in this land of, okay, you got to figure it out yourself.
The mom's attaching themselves to the child. The dad can't connect the child emotionally, and he really doesn't know what to do. And so the mom's looking at the dad and saying, "Why aren't you doing the same thing that I'm doing?" And the dad's saying, "I'm just trying to connect with my son."
We just decided in the beginning this is going to take both of us.
The powerful thing that we did was we just would not back up from each other. We just kept on moving forward towards each other. It was those messages that I would hear every week from our pastor, Joel.
The winds may be strong, the circumstances may look bad, but if you'll stay in faith, not get bitter, not start complaining, those winds will blow you to a new level of your destiny.
I think to myself, if you go to a church that doesn't give you hope, run, right? Pastor Joel has taught us in the fact that you only have grace for today. So many times we want to always know what's going to happen in the future and what's going to happen 3 weeks from now. What it's taught me with Connor is just take it day by day. We've only got grace for a day. A few weeks later, Sam calls me from upstairs and she said, Craig, get up here. Get up here as soon as you can. And I thought there was something wrong, you know, and so I run upstairs. She says, I was putting Connor to bed. I was reading him books like I do every night. And she said, all of a sudden, he just began to speak. He began to say one word after another word. So it's been 5 years since I've heard him even speak 4 words together. And she says, Connor, say it for Daddy. And he lifted up his little head and he just began to speak. And he said, this is my Bible. I am what it says I am.
I have what it says I have. I can do it since I can do.
And he said, this is my Bible pledge. And we just began to break down, crying. It was, to say it was a miracle would be an understatement.
And it was almost like a declaration that, that was when, we're like, okay, God's got this little guy. And, that it was just that, that faith of the first words he's saying is a declaration over his life. Having Connor and being so involved at church, we were just noticing we can't just put him in the typical children's classroom.
Like this, go blue.
Blue.
All right. What color is this?
Green.
So I was finding myself staying home, while Craig was going, and we're like, okay, if this is happening with our family, and this is, our job is to be at church and helping families, then, we can't be the only ones going through this.
And God spoke to me one day and he said, Craig, he says, look at the children's facility we have here. He says, looks like Disneyland. And he said, those kids deserve the very best, just like every other child.
So he started the Champions class. That's a class for special needs children. Today there are over 300 kids in that class.
And that's why I think I know what God meant, that he was going to use him to reach millions of people, because autism isn't the reason why Connor's reaching millions of people. It's because of Connor.
Other churches across the country have copied our model, and now there are Champions classes for children with special needs in churches all across the country.
It's really not just a Sunday school program, it's really a developmental center for kids that any church can adapt and use. And it's got a physical therapy room and a sensory room and an educational room and a spiritual therapy room with curriculum.
What happened? God used that storm to blow him to people in need. He realized God was directing the winds of that storm.
There's so many families dealing with not only things that we're dealing with, but families that are going through so much in their life. And it was those messages that he would say over and over again. Just because you have a good day, you go right back into it the next day. The next day with a special needs child, it can be harder than the day you just left. And so you're just looking for hope every week.
Get your seatbelt on.
What God has done through this little boy is unbelievable.
You look back now and, God had everything strategically, worked out for you.
You're not a victim, Craig. And Samantha, you're victors. Your son's not a victim. He's a victor. There's hope in every situation, every challenge, everything that they face. There's hope in those times.
When everything comes against you, remember, airplanes take off against the wind, not with the wind. Those winds were never meant to push you down. They were meant to lift you to a higher level of your destiny. When an eagle faces a storm, he doesn't try to fight his way through the wind, through the rain, frustrated, struggling, putting forth all this effort. No, he simply stretches out his wings and he lets the strong winds lift him higher and higher. Finally, he rises above the storm where it's as calm and peaceful as can be. When the winds are blowing, things come against you. It's easy to get frustrated, start fighting, trying to change things that you were never meant to change. Worried about the medical report, can't sleep at night, anxiety, fear. No, be an eagle. God, I've done everything I can. Now I'm going to quit struggling. I'm going to quit trying to make it happen my way. God, I'm going to trust you.
Stay tuned for more of Joel Osteen coming up next.